drooling, you just, feel free to move out of the way, all
It's
right?
all good.
Yeah.
We'll forgive you.
Okay, well, I'm not, I appreciate that. Yeah, I like being around you. Hey, how many veterans do I have here? I know we got some families here, but actually people who've served. Okay, great, I appreciate that. And I appreciate Karen and CVA having me here this evening. I know some of you already know me, and this will be the first time for some of you hearing me speak. And I kind of think of a story of a young Marine who had been out in the field. He'd been on maneuvers all day long, and he also had a young family. And he came home and he was tired. He wanted to jump in the sack to get a little sleep before the next day's maneuvers. But he had a very rambunctious 5-year-old son. Had lots of energy, and he couldn't get him down to sleep. So finally, the young Marine got his son in bed, and the young Marine gets in bed himself, and he's thinking, I'm ready to go to sleep. And on the other side of the house, he hears his son. His son says, "Dad?" The Marine said, "Yes, son." He goes, "I'm thirsty. Can I have a glass of water?" The Marine said, "No, son, you should have thought about that before you got in bed. You're not getting any water. Go to sleep." About a couple minutes later, the little boy goes, "Dad?" "Yes, son." "Really would like to have a glass of water. Can I get some water?" The Marine says, "No, son. Got to go to sleep. Get it tomorrow." A couple minutes later, the Marine is listening, and he hears his son, "Dad?" Now the Marine's starting to get a little aggravated at his son. He goes, "Yes, son, what is it?" He goes, "Dad, sure would like to have a glass of water." And the Marine says, "Look, you're not getting any water. Don't ask me again, because if I hear one other thing out of you, I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to come and spank you. Go to sleep. I don't want to hear anything more about it." And then there's silence in the house. A few minutes later, the little boy goes, "Dad?" The Marine says, "Yes, son." "Dad, when you come down here to spank me, can you bring a glass of water, because I'm really thirsty?" Now what you get from that is even a 5-year-old Marine, 5-year-old son of a Marine, adapt, overcome, make it happen. He was going to get that glass of water no matter what, right? For sure, yeah. Well, Karen could have brought anybody in here to talk to the group this evening. She could have brought one of our representatives from here in North Florida. She may have been able to bring a state representative in here to talk to us this evening. She may even have the pull-through, since CVA is a national organization. She may have even been able to bring one of our senators in here to talk to us this evening. If she had brought someone like that in here to talk to us, I know exactly what they would have said. They would have stood here, and their speech would have started something like this. They would have said, "Thank you for your service." They would have said, "Thank you for your sacrifice." They would have said, "We have liberty and freedom because of you." This evening, in the few minutes that I have, I don't want to talk about you. I want to talk about us. Because I think that when you have someone who stands in front of a group of veterans, and they stand here and they talk about you, there's a big difference than when you have a veteran who has stood the watch like you, who wants to stand here and talk about us. Because I believe that veterans have issues that are unique only to us. We have been at war for the last 15 years. 7,000 of us are dead. 50,000 of us are maimed. And an untold number of us suffer from PTSD. 8% of the state of Florida is veterans. Yet 25% of all suicides in the state of Florida come from that 8%. You think about that. 22 of us every day get up and decide that life is no longer worth living, and we take our own life. I've buried 3 so far. Veterans have issues that are unique only to us. Let's take a look at history and see how our government has treated veterans once we're off the battlefield. 8 weeks after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the Continental Congress convened and passed their very first federal pension law. That law was for veterans. And what that law said was, any officer, soldier, sailor, or Marine who was disabled in the Revolutionary War, once the war was over, they would get half of their pay for the rest of their life. Once the war was over and the veteran was used, Congress said that they weren't going to be able to fulfill that obligation because of too much debt. My, how some things don't change. Even though President Washington pleaded over and over, don't leave out the veterans, Congress said, no, we're not going to do it. But what we will do is we'll give the veteran what was called a commutation certificate. And that certificate was a cash payment, but it lost value over time. Now fast forward to the Civil War. That was the greatest loss of military life in the history of our country. 2% of the nation died during that war. 620,000 of us on the battlefield. Now in 1866, when the war was over and Congress reconvened, Congress was so happy with how they had handled the war, they doubled their pay. What did they do to the active duty military? They cut their pay in half. That's why in 1865 it was General Armstrong Custer, but when he died in 1876 at the Battle of Little Bighorn, he died as Colonel Custer. Let's fast forward again to the First World War. When Woodrow Wilson was campaigning for president, he said, "You vote for me, and I will make sure that we don't get engaged in the Great War in Europe." 3 months after he took his oath of office, we're in World War I. 4.7 million of us answered the call. And we answered the call and we fulfilled it as we always do. We answered the call, we took the battlefield, we kicked ass, and we came home as the winners that we are. But we also came back with tuberculosis, and we came back with shell shock, which today we call PTSD. Now Congress, in order to thank the veterans for their service, gave them a service certificate. Now this is the end of World War I. The veteran, it was a one-time cash payment. The veteran was able to get that cash in 1945. In 1929, the economy collapsed. Kind of ironic, because when the economy collapsed, Hoover goes to Congress and said, "I need a $44 million stimulus bill. I got infrastructure to take care of. Roads, bridges, schools, not a penny for the veteran." Fast forward now to 1932. We have several years of the Great Depression now behind us. And we have scores of veterans, scores of us, who are jobless, homeless, and hungry. So they petitioned Congress. They said, "Look, you've offered us this money. It's a one-time payment. You're going to give it to us in 1945 anyway. Why don't you give it to us now so that we can feed our families?" What did Congress say? No. Congress said no. And so what came out of that was called the Bonus Army. It was 17,000 veterans who moved into Washington, D.C. They also brought their families. That brought the number up to 26,000. There were groups who decided to rally around and support veterans. Then the group was up to 45,000. Okay, so quite a number of people in Washington, D.C. Now what's ironic is who was leading the Bonus Army? It was an E5, a sergeant, Walter Williams. Now you think about this. This is 1932. And this sergeant brought veterans from all over the country. They didn't have iPhones. They didn't have Twitter. They didn't have the nightly news. They didn't have Facebook. They were doing it all word of mouth. And this sergeant was able to get 17,000 veterans and their families to move into Washington, D.C. to try to force Congress to give them the one-time payment. In July of 1932, Hoover said he had had enough. And he calls out the Army to get rid of the veterans. You may recognize some of these names. The person in charge of it was Colonel MacArthur. He brought in Eisenhower and Patton, and they got rid of the veterans. Now, when they got rid of the veterans, they didn't allow them to take the belongings that they had. They ran them out of their homes and burnt the homes to the ground, including everything that was in it. Right? So when they moved in on the veterans, there were shots fired. 2 of us were killed, and 1,017 of us were wounded. Thank you for your service. Now they're not only on the street with the few belongings they had, all that was turned into ash. And now they're on the street with nothing but the clothes on their back. Okay, let's fast forward again to 2014. And we see in the news that there's veterans dying at the VA. Scores of us dying because we're left on a list and left there with no care until we die. Now Congress saw this, and you know Congress doesn't like to be seen in the news in a negative light. So they sprang into action, and they did what they do best. They passed a spending bill. And that was going to take care of all the veterans at the VA. Yet we still see veterans dying. Why is that? And the answer is because when Congress passed that bill, Congress went out and hired 100,000 administrators into the VA. Not doctors, not psychiatrists, administrators. Listen, folks, veterans do not need administrators. Amen. Veterans need healing. 22 of us get up every day and decide that life is no longer worth living, and we don't make that decision because we don't have an administrator. Yet this is how our government treats us, the veteran. Now, when I think about our earned benefits, what comes to mind when I look at those in Congress? I always wonder, boy, I sure hope those non-serving representatives take care of us, the veteran. And then I read that our TRICARE rates have gone up, that our pharmacy rates have gone up. And then I read recently that by law, our active duty members are supposed to get a 2.4% pay raise. And that was capped at 1.3% in violation of the law. Now you know, and you know, and you know that if you violate the law, you're going to go to jail. Yet Congress caps the pay on our active duty military, and nothing happens. And we stand by quietly and do nothing. We just accept it. I want to read a MOA article to you. It's really short, and it has to do with the discussion that we're talking about now. And I hope you're members of MOA. But there's a gentleman here. He's a colonel in the Air Force. Got any Air Force people here? Okay. Okay. This Air Force colonel's got it right on the money. He says,
really? We appreciate it. Yeah, Grunts really appreciate those F-16s and A-10s.
Maybe it's your name in the article. I don't know. Oh. But anyway, this colonel's got it right. He says, no other federal agency experiences the ups and downs of personnel like the military. Do we ever see the Department of Health and Human Services, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the IRS, or any other agency take drastic cuts like the military? No. We send our troops out to do battle, dump them when they get home, and then we mess with their retirement. I think that colonel has it right. Right now in the Senate, there's 20 of us. It was 19 last year. We picked up Tom Cotton. Now we're at 20. So we have 20 in the Senate who have served, and there's 80 in the Senate who's never served. So let's take a look at what one of these non-serving senators think about us. In 2013, Charles Schumer, who is a senator from New York, was on MSNBC's Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough. And Joe asked the senator, hey, I'm really concerned about this deficit. You know, we just, this week, raised the debt limit one more time, and we're already approaching $19 trillion on our debt. So he's asking the senator, what do you think we should do? And this is what the senator said, and I want to quote him because I want you to know exactly what he said. He said, civilian employees have been cut. Military retirees should have their retirement cut an equal amount as they've never paid into it. Is that how you feel? Because this is how this senator feels about us. And so Joe Scarborough was kind of taken back about that. And he's like, really, Senator? You want to cut veterans' retirement? What is Congress going to give up? And this is what he said, and I want to quote him again. He said, we, the Congress, have already taken pretty big cuts. We haven't had a pay raise in a long time. And with the passage of health care, we are now paying a lot more. This guy makes $174,000 a year, and his idea of a pay cut is not getting a pay raise. Why do we accept that? Why do we tolerate that from these politicians? And yet I guarantee you when he goes up for election, we'll send him back up there one more time to tell us that our service doesn't matter. I think the biggest threat that we have to our national security and to our economic security is this national debt. I have read enough history to know that when a country, when a nation lets its debt get out of control, eventually the economy collapses and they don't come back. I hope this never happens to us. But I got to tell you, I can see a future for us. Well, one day, each one of us in this room, we go to the mailbox, and there's a letter in there, and we open it up. And it says, because of the increased deficit that we have, Congress has passed the Budget Reconciliation Act. And now it is illegal for a citizen to get more than one check from the government. So which one do you want? Do you want your Social Security? Do you want your retirement? Or do you want your disability? Because you're only going to get one. And at that point, we're going to say, well, that can't be. We paid into Social Security. We've earned our retirement. And we have our disability because of our service. Why do we only have to choose one? And finally, we're going to get motivated. Finally, we're going to get inspired. And we're going to get the 20 in Congress, the 20 of those senators who have served to stand up for us. And they'll do that. But you know what's going to happen? The 80 who haven't served, like Charles Schumer, are going to tell the 20 to sit down and shut up. Pick the one check you want because you're only going to get one and that's it. And at that point, it's going to be done for us. So if you look at Congress, how many do we have in there? Well, there's last year there was 86 in the House. There was 19 in the Senate. We picked up Tom Cotton last year, so that puts us 20% in the Senate, but we lost 6 of us in the House. So last year we had a little less than 20% of the veterans in the House of Representatives had any veteran experience at all, any military experience at all. Now we're just above 18%. You really have to not be paying attention in the last few years to not notice the great strides that the LGBT community has made. I'm not here to pass a judgment on that group. I'm just pointing out that look at the great strides that they have made. Why is that? Why is LGBT making such great strides? I'll tell you why. Because LGBT is up and moving. VETS, we're sitting and waiting. LGBT is up and moving all the way to the Supreme Court. VETS, we're sitting and waiting for our TRICARE to go up. We're sitting and waiting for our pharmacy to go up. We're sitting and waiting for our active duty military pay to be capped in violation of the law. We're sitting and waiting while our military gets eviscerated while the world burns. And we're sitting and waiting while we die on lists at the VA. I don't know about you folks, but I am tired of sitting and waiting. When I retired from the Navy 3 years ago, the very first time that someone came up to me and said, "Thank you for your service," I cringed. And I never would say that back, even to a veteran that I knew had served. I would never say it back. And it took me a while to figure out why it makes me cringe when someone says to me, "Thank you for your service." And the answer is when someone says, "Thank you for your service," my response is, you know what? This captain's service is not done yet. My service to the country that I love will not be done until I draw my last breath. I'm looking around this room. Is there anyone that feels like I do? Aren't you tired of having people say, "Thank you for your service, now get over in that corner and we don't want to hear anything else from you"? Because that is not me, and it never will be me. I did not join the Navy and serve my country so I could get a retirement. I joined the Navy and to serve my country because I love and I believe in what this country has to offer.
Yep.
And when we quit standing up for this country, folks, it will be done. So look, when I look around this room and I'm trying to inspire you, look, I don't have all the answers, but I know this. I think our country is going in the wrong direction. Right? That's what I feel. And the more I see, the more I think it is going in the wrong direction. I don't have all the answers, but I got to tell you, I think a lot of the answers to what's going on in our country lies in this room. Who knows more about the military than us? Who knows more about foreign policy than us? Who knows more about safety and security of this country than us? Who knows more about how to fix the VA than us? I say nobody. Let me give you an idea of how powerful we could be as veterans if we would get engaged, get informed, unite, and get moving. If you look at the top 3 states as far as veteran population, it's California, Texas, and Florida. There's 1.8 million of us in California. There's 1.7 million of us in Texas, 1.6 million of us here in the state of Florida. Of those 3 states, the state that we can make the greatest impact, in my opinion, is this state. Here's why. Even though California has 200,000 more veterans than we do, they have twice the population. A congressional district is 700,000 constituents. There's 53 congressional districts in the state of California. There's only 27 in the state of Florida. So what that means is that if we would get organized, if we would unite, we could send 27 veterans to the House of Representatives from this state alone. We could have both of our senators to be veterans. Every mayor, dog catcher, sheriff, you name it. We could put a veteran in that position of authority if we wanted to. But we've got to want to do it. Look, I don't want anybody walking out of here and saying, "Hey, I went to the CVA meeting and there was this passionate captain who was bad-mouthing our representatives," because that's not me. Don't go out and say that because it's not true. But I just want to lay some facts out in front of you. We have 4 representatives in Northeast Florida. If you look at the number of us in Northeast Florida, it's somewhere between 150 to 200,000. Let's say 175,000 just to make it even, right? 175,000 of us in North Florida. And yet, who do we have representing us in the House of Representatives? We have Ted Yoho, who never served, Andrew Crenshaw, who never served, Kareem Brown, who never served, and Ron DeSantis, who served a little bit, but is not on the Armed Services Committee. Think about that. 175,000 of us, and yet we have never served, served a little bit, and not even on the Armed Services Committee. And he's not going to be there next year because now he's going to run for Senate. Why don't we accept that? Why don't we have someone who instead of being outside saying, hey, I'll support you veterans as long as you vote for me, why don't we have someone that's standing in the VA with us like everybody else? Knowing that if that individual makes a decision that's against veterans, it's going to affect him just like it affects the rest of us. We have the power to make that change if we wanted to, but we got to want to. Look, if you like what you're hearing from me and you want to make a difference, Karen already alluded to it. There is a movement, and I say it's a movement because it's not a group. It's a movement here in Florida, and it was started by Bob. But I have to believe in my heart that it's gaining ground now. And the reason that I say that it's a movement, because we don't charge dues or anything like that. Nobody wants another meeting to add on their calendar, right? That's why we only meet once a quarter. The next time we meet is the 16th of January, and it's called Vets for Vets. The overarching principle at Vets for Vets is very simple. We believe that every issue with a veteran, every issue that concerns a veteran, is best solved by another veteran. If there's a veteran out there that needs help, we want to connect a veteran who can help them, right? We have 4 goals at Vets for Vets. Very simple goals. We want to inform, we want to connect, we want to grow, and we want to organize and unite. Because I cannot sit on the sidelines any longer. And I don't want to hear thank you for your service until I've drawn my last breath. And if you believe in what I'm saying, then I'm offering you another opportunity. We meet on the 16th of January. That's our next meeting. It's always held at the Veterans Memorial Arena for veterans. We do it 11:30 to 1300. We only do it for an hour and a half. So you think about that. In a 365-day period, we only meet for a total of 6 hours. Do you have 6 hours out of 365 days? Come on the 16th. If you like what you hear, then we want you to come back. Okay, I'm going to encourage you to come, but I'm going to challenge you. I'm looking around this room. There's 40 people here? If you call out and get 10 other veterans to come with you, then we would be 400, 440 veterans at that point on top of the veterans that we already have coming. I'm encouraging you to do that. When I stand up in front of this movement, I do a roll call. Right? We have quite a few veterans in Baker County, right? Do we have anybody here from Baker County? Right. You know how many veterans I had at Vets for Vets from Baker County last time? Was it you 2? Because that's all I had was 2. All of the veterans of Baker County, and we can only get 2 veterans to come. So I'm encouraging you to come. If you 2 come, you will have doubled the number of veterans that we have out of Baker County. Okay? Look, I'll leave you with this thought, and maybe it'll inspire you to move out on Vets for Vets and to join up with CVA and to do what Doug's getting ready to tell us to do here. We as veterans, we do not always deserve what we get. But I'm telling you, as veterans, we always deserve who we vote for. You think about it. Appreciate your time.